In this episode of the Courageous Public Health Podcast, Dr. Khalilah LeGrand shows what it looks like to practice courage through restraint, especially in high-stakes public health moments where she holds information that could change how a story is perceived, but chooses not to share it. As a spokesperson navigating crisis, scrutiny, and public pressure, she reflects on the discipline it takes to stay aligned with your values, even when you know more than you can say. This is a conversation about courage, authenticity, and values, and how being intentional, measured, and fully yourself can be a powerful form of leadership. You're listening to the Courageous Public Health Podcast, episode 55. To all the courageous women leading in public health, this podcast is your space to turn up the volume on your courage. This space centers your voice. This space celebrates your passion. This space amplifies your courage. My role? To listen, to amplify, and to stand with you in the fight for equity. My name is Dr. Christy McClamrock. I am an epidemiologist, consultant, the founder and CEO of Courageous Public Health, and the host of the Courageous Public Health Podcast. Each week, I have real, unfiltered conversations with women in public health about the challenges you face, the power you hold, and your vision for the future. We talk about the authenticity, vulnerability, and courage that you bring, not just to public health, but to every part of your lives. Because courage is about action, even in fear. It's about taking up space, leading unapologetically, refusing to be erased, and knowing you never have to do it alone. If you're ready to turn up the volume on your courage, if you're ready to take up space, if you're ready to smash the racist, patriarchal, cisnormative, heteronormative, ableist, capitalistic systems, then listen to this new episode. Hello, and welcome to the Courageous Public Health Podcast. I'm Dr. Christy McClamrock. Over time, I've come to see something clearly. Courage is already everywhere in public health. It's just rarely named, supported, or treated as a leadership skill. Women are navigating complex systems, making high-stakes decisions, and holding a tremendous amount, often without the structures they need to do that work sustainably. Through Courageous Public Health, I partner with public health and other types of organizations to help shift that, supporting leaders to act with clarity and integrity, even when the systems around them are under pressure. Today's conversation is about what it looks like to lead with intention, to stay grounded in your values, even when you're under pressure and not able to say everything you know. Dr. Khalilah LeGrand serves as Vice President of Communications and Public Relations for the Association of State and Territorial Health Officials, where she leads strategic communications efforts to advance public health system transformation and support state and territorial health leaders in demonstrating the value of public health. Prior to joining ASTHO, she held leadership roles at the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services, including Chief of Staff and Director of Communications. Dr. LeGrand holds a Doctor of Organizational Leadership and has built a career at the intersection of public health, communications, and leadership, bringing a values-driven approach to how information is shared and understood. She also holds advanced degrees in communications and psychology, along with executive training in management and diversity and inclusion. Let's hear what courage looks like when it's measured and intentional. Hi, everybody. I'm here with Dr. Khalilah LeGrand. Very excited to have you on today. How's it going?
Good. It's good. Thank you. And I'm very happy to see you, Christy, and get into our conversation.
Yes, we've actually spent a big chunk of time talking before we even hit record. So we're like, we have, and we're like ready to like continue on when everybody can hear. So I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself. But before we do that, let's do our quick shout out to our beloved Danette.
Yes,
And I'm
the one and only.
One and only.
Danette R. Smith.
Danette, yes, Danette R. Smith, exactly.
Yes.
I remember her mentioning you, like, it's been, a couple years ago, and how much respect she has for you and how much affection she has for you. And so it's really exciting. It's really exciting to now for us to finally connect.
Yes, and I mentioned to you when we were talking that I can see why she connected the two of us and why she kept saying, "Have you not called Christy back?" And apologies, a little bit about me. You said a couple years ago, my life completely changed, and I have a wonderful little 2-year-old energetic boy, and mommy brain is real. I can assure you. I know you've already been down that road, but I am in the throes of mommy world and all the things. And so, yes, it seems like it's been a snap. And so I was like, I thought you just told me about her a few months ago. And it's like, oh, that was 2 years ago. Let me get in touch. I was starting a new job. I was having a baby. It was a lot going on. I was moving. Yeah, so it was a lot going on. But absolutely, shout out to Danette Smith. Has been such an instrumental part of my career path of late over the last 7 to 8 years of my life. It was a pleasure working for her and with her. And, it's always nice when I see her phone number pop up on the screen and, I know I'm going to laugh. I'm going to, be moved and going to really have an insightful conversation anytime. It is
the best. It is the best feeling to see her name pop up on the screen. And I feel like you and I are going to have that too, moving forward. It's going to be like,
yes, I agree.
I'm going to see your name pop up on the screen and be like, yes.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that, for that introduction. I really want to get into, hearing some examples of courage in your life, your personal life, your professional life. Talk to me about courage.
Absolutely. Yeah, I actually was talking to my current boss, Carolyn Mullen, about this conversation. And I said, this is called Courageous Conversations. And I was like, I don't know if I'm being always courageous in public health. And I said, I'm cautious, restrained, sometimes and imploring people to do the same. And she said that is courageous. And I really appreciated her framing when we were, just chatting. I was like, I didn't think of it that way. And so, as I kind of thought about my career path and the different jobs that I've had and roles, exercising restraint, I can see how it could certainly be perhaps considered courageous. As a spokesperson, there are often things that for organizations that I work for, oftentimes we'd be contacted when there was something, proverbially, did I say that?
Proverbially,
I didn't say that right. Proverbial hitting of a fan. Those things happen, as one of my colleagues saying, the merconium has hit the fan. And so when often I am contacted, it is because of a challenge. And especially in some of the environments that I worked in that were more challenging than others, working for a health department for a state, working in a large urban school district, and others. There were times where the news media already kind of shaped people's opinion based on the information they had. And again, understandably so. But there were so many times where I would think I am privy to some intimate details with regard to this situation, investigation, or what have you, that would certainly change the public's opinion and would change the slant of this story. However, you have to exercise restraint. You're preparing, whomever to go on camera to talk about it if it's not yourself. And, you just have to hope that the information will come out when it needs to. And you assure the public that you're doing your due diligence to complete this investigation or to embark on whatever efforts need to be undertaken so that you can do the right thing by the people who are involved in the story. But there were so many times that I would think if only people knew, one or two details, they would not feel this particular way.
That sounds really tricky. I mean, that's a tricky, and I think part of why that is courageous is because part of courage is acting aligned with your values.
Yes, absolutely. And I love that you said that. It was funny as I, pondered on that question too. I thought about, and I shared as I am raising a 2-year-old at this stage in my life. And I remember my parents raised 6 children. And they did a wonderful job. And I remember, my mother still says, you were who you were from the time you were, came into this world. And I see that so much through the lens of my child. And I mean, he is energetic and, steadfast and very stubborn like his mother. But I think about that as relates to values. And I think about there was a time, when I was junior high, and I know it's now middle school for folks, for younger
For us,
people.
It was junior high. Me too.
It's junior high. Yeah. And I think about that. And I think about how there was a teacher who said something that was very inappropriate to my twin sister about what her thoughts were about me. And it was not right for her to be commenting on me. It was a very wrong perception that she had. And she just based it on my look and appearance. And I looked a little older than I was at that time. But she made this assumption. And I remember when I heard that, I immediately left out of one teacher's classroom. I marched into her classroom. And, at 12 years old, very adamantly said, this is wrong. You should not be speaking to my sister about me, nor should you even be befriending students when you're a teacher, and your role is to protect. And I articulated that, about faced, went back to my classroom. And when I got home, I told my mother about the situation because if the school was going to call, I wanted her to be aware. I did it in a respectful of a manner as I could do it in that situation, but I was firm and I never had that issue happen again. And I think about that because I am very centered in my values. I remember getting into a little altercation with my older sister, and we're very close and always have been. But, we took a vote on, she was the oldest and all of us wanted to watch cartoons and she wanted to watch the soap opera of the day. And so I said, well, let's be democratic about this thing. Let's vote. And we voted for the cartoons, and she thought she could override and be authoritarian. And I said, that's not going to happen. So an altercation ensued. Parents got involved at a later date. But I have a sense of right and wrong and justice, and like, this is not right. And this is what should be done. And I've always had that. So, values definitely, I think, are inherent, and you have your sense of value system that is instilled in you from very early on. And I think about that often as, like I said, as I'm looking through the eyes of a 2-year-old and thinking about the things that my mom says to me a lot.
I imagine you walking around as a kid, as a teenager, and just having these like mic drop moments, right? It's like... And then you about face and walk out of the room. And what's amazing is that now your son gets to figure out his mic drop moments.
Absolutely.
Which is actually such a pleasure to watch. It's so amazing.
It's so amazing to watch. And just like the way his mind works, and he is going to figure something out, and he gets frustrated when he can't do it. And I'm like, I can help you, but he wants to do it himself. And so I am very early learning how to just be of guidance and assistance and not do it for him, because he is. And I'm like, my siblings will say often, oh, I wonder where he gets that from. And like, the curse that your parents give you, I hope you
do they say that sarcastically?
Well. Oh, yeah.
Wonder where he gets that from.
Yeah, I'm like, I have no idea where he gets that sense of independence from. I do not know.
Yep. Okay, so Khalilah, I really want to hear some more. You're already talking about authenticity, right? And your authenticity, your son's authenticity. I would love to hear some more about courage as authenticity, especially in places where your authenticity and your full self, your full expansive self, is not always welcome.
Absolutely. I very much appreciate that question, Christy. And, I very much like to think, that authenticity is a way that we can exercise our power. I love that, again, framing, because there are many rooms that I have entered into, and people I've encountered that, it's not always your voice isn't always welcome to the table. And certainly in this current environment and climate, it's a little harder for African American women. We see the statistics and we know what's happening in the workforce. And, I am really appreciative that I've had so many men and women who have poured into me, but especially women that I've looked up to from an early age, my mom being one of them, who was, it has continued to be a role model for me, just being yourself. And I remember when I was very painfully shy as a child, and people don't think that, but under 10, I was pretty darn shy and kind of, kept to myself and didn't say a lot. And I remember though, my mom, she is, a great orator, and she's, very dynamic, and she was a trainer and did HR and a minister, and like everybody's like, she's just so wonderful. And I'm like, she is. And then I remember as a little child, seeing this woman on TV who was, a larger African-American woman who reminded me of me. And it was this woman, Oprah Winfrey. And I will never forget the first day coming home from junior high, turning on the TV and seeing this woman. And I'm like, these are the people who I want to be like, or similar to, like, there's something about them. And through that, I remember like trying to emulate my mom for a while. And trying to emulate her wasn't really hitting the right note because I wasn't being me. I am an person. My mother does not. She uses like lots of props and things like that in her efforts, and whether she was training HR or in front of a congregation, and that's not necessarily me. And so I remember vividly saying, while I can appreciate their essence and while I can appreciate what they bring to the table and the impact that they make, that's not me. So who are you, and what is your voice going to sound like? And so as I got to a place where I could be more comfortable with me, I am I lean into the When I teach speech to students, I say, hey, one of the greatest orators of our time is Barack Obama. Not getting into politics, but he is a very wonderful orator, and his speech writers had to learn how to work his speech utterances into his speeches, and it does not take away. And so that is one of the things that I've learned when I walk into spaces. I am, I can be loud and boisterous, and I know that I can talk, and I can talk, and I can talk. And, sometimes I will tell myself to be quiet in front of the room. Okay, I'm going to stop talking right now because I know I can still talk for another 35 minutes. And that's just who I am. And that's me. And so I found that as I lean more into the authenticity that is me, I'm almost 5'10". I had my growth spurt pretty early. I have used that to my advantage. I used to be very self-conscious about it. I prayed and prayed to be 5'5.5". That was the height I wanted to stop growing. I did not stop growing, but I learned how to make that work for me. And it works for me, especially in the environments that I've been in, especially with some of the contentious stories or reporters that have like tried to speak to, my bosses or whoever I'm supporting as a spokesperson. Yeah. I will use my stature and escort that person out of the room and step in. And they typically are like, oh yeah, I'm going to just back on up and let them out of the room. So I've learned to use that, not in an overly forceful way, but just in a way to say, this conversation is over. This person has to, has given you all that they can. You can follow up with me, but we're going to leave this room right now. And so I've learned to lean into that and use those things that are me to my advantage.
Oh my gosh. I told you before we hit record that, that whole thing about, oh, you're supposed to be 5'5.5". And I mean, that's patriarchy. That's, I will not swear. I will not swear. I will not swear on my podcast, but it's very tempting right at the moment. But like, that is.
Yes, it is. And it's like, why does one have to only be 5'5.5" or under a certain height? I'm sorry. My whole family, I have some basketball players. I didn't play. I tell my mom, I remind her, you should have let me play. Could have been in the WNBA, but okay, we're moving on from that, Mom. I went and, used my skills for other things. But I just am like, it's okay. And I have a cousin whose daughter is 6 feet and she's 14 years old. And I look at this young lady, and she is a basketball player, and she's going to probably be in WNBA in a few years. But I look at this young lady who is so comfortable and confident in who she is now. And it just, it gives me chills. It inspires me. And I'm like, you go, girl, you be who you are. You lean into that. And, it took me a bit longer. I'm appreciative that I got to that point earlier in, my journey. But you have to learn, what works for you, and don't be someone else. Be who you are.
Yeah. And what's so completely insane about it is that we could have exactly the same conversation about being, I don't know, under 5'3". So it's like, you're supposed to be between 5'3" and 5'5.5". If you're over 5'5.5", then there's all this, junk around it. But if you're quote unquote too short, then it's exactly the same. It's exactly the same kind of thing. It's like,
one of my best friends growing up, we still are very close friends now. And like, my mother would call us Mutt and Jeff. And if people know, I know that's a generational thing, but Mutt and Jeff, we look like Mutt and Jeff. She was very short. I was very tall, but we're like, hey, we're going to be who we are, and we're going to be friends. And that's what it is.
Maybe this is a terrible analogy, but my reference instead of Mutt and Jeff would be Frog and Toad, right? Because
oh yeah.
Frog was really tall and Toad was really short, and and yet they were best friends, and they
had common threads. And that's the thing that I find with authenticity is that if you are authentic, you will find a common thread. It will help you articulate to someone who is a contrarian or on another side of an issue than you. But there's always going to be a common thread, parenting, or, whatever you find, when you talk to someone, if you talk to someone, pretty much, to me, I feel like over 10 minutes, you're going to find a common thread. And that's going to help to build trust and build community, and help you to engage in ways that you might not otherwise have done. And that's why I think I love this podcast, and just having these courageous conversations, because, when we don't converse is when we start making up things, and when we start, getting into our own heads about whatever, versus just ask the person, talk to them, and see where you can find, some common ground, and agree to have some discourse. And there's a way to disagree with someone too.
Yeah. And we can disagree and still stay connected.
And still stay connected. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that.
So I am very curious to hear about your vision, for public health, vision for yourself, maybe even a little bit of vision for your son.
Yeah, I think vision, when I think about that, I think vision for myself is continuing to use my voice where it can be impactful. And right now, that is in the space of public health. I really enjoy speaking with other communicators. I have a number of forums where I'm talking with other public health communicators. I'm helping to articulate, out to our membership and others when I'm doing the work that I do. And I think it's just so powerful to help people focus on truth and data. And, regardless of, the current environment that presents some challenges right now for public health practitioners and people that are supporting public health, I think if we continue to speak to data, speak truth, we will get to common ground. And, as I mentioned, I have had so many people pour into me, especially women. And I find it really important to do the same. And so one of the visions, a thing that I think about in the future, and I try my hardest to do now, is to really, pour into other young women and other young people. Friends of mine who have kids that are, college age, or young professionals. I really enjoy speaking with college students and young professionals on the precipice of like, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? My niece is, figuring it out herself, and she's in her, mid 20s. And to watch these young people, I do think they are more certain about themselves, and I appreciate that. And they're more certain and hopeful about the future. And, so my vision is to pour into them and share my lessons learned, and hope that they take that and, and go beyond. Certainly, I would say that goes for my son as well. It'll, I often think, like, what is life going to be like in 20 years for him? What is, this country going to look like? What is, his trajectory of a job opportunity, or, just who is he going to be personality wise? What is his impact going to be in the world? And so, my daily prayer is that I am what he needs me to be, and he's what I need him to be, so that we can both become whatever, to go down the path that we need to go down. And that is truly a daily prayer of mine, and just appreciative that we get to allow light to shine through us in whatever way possible. And so I'm excited to see the growth. I'm excited to see, the navigation through, these times. I mean, we're living in history. I think sometimes people forget that. So every single day, like, we're going to look back in 10 years from now, 15 years from now, we're going to have lived through a very historical time. And so, I wonder what that is going to look like. And so, if I can do my part in my little space that I occupy, that's what I'm hoping to do.
It's funny you said, we're going to have lived through a historical time. And I'm like, again, we did this with COVID.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
And I think that they're like distinct, the COVID pandemic was like its own thing. And then what's happening now is kind of, it's related, but it's a different thing. And,
a different thing. Yes.
And honestly, like, there's been, that's been happening throughout history, right? Like,
yeah. Kind of back to that common threads again. We think about, like, where were we all when Princess died? My parents, where were they when JFK or MLK were shot? And, we're going to have these pivotal moments. And I think sometimes we're just entrenched in our day-to-day lives and going about it. And it's like, this is my life. But I'm like, we are living history right now. It doesn't feel like it now, but we're going to look back in 10, 15 years. My grandmother died a few months short of her 99th birthday. I want to say 98th or 99th birthday, my last grandparent. And I think about this woman, I remember talking to her one time and dropping her off at the airport when she was 75. And I was like, she traveled a lot, she worked. And I said, Grandma, where are you going? I'm thinking she's going to meet up with some friends or whatever. And she said, oh, I'm going to a conference to learn how to design websites. She was 75.
Wow.
And I said, what? And she said, no one at my job wanted to do it, so I just volunteered. And I'm like, wow, 75. And she was going to a conference. And that was many years, and this was before, the easier systems, the CMSs, right. These are like code.
Yeah.
At that time. But she was always very willing to try something new, to innovate. And, this person has been around from, I think about just even with telephones, like there was party lines and over her lifetime. And this person is 75 saying, oh, I'm going to a conference to learn how to design a website. And so, like, those are the things that I want to make sure, like, I am staying on top of. Like, I just want to be actively in my life and living it, and whether that's through work, whether that's through other endeavors. I hope to be 75 and my kid or grandkids are saying to me, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm doing something.
I'm going innovative to a conference to learn this innovative thing. Oh, wow.
Exactly.
That's a great vision.
It has never left me.
Yeah.
It has never left me because I was just so like, wow, that is pretty cool.
Yes. That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I also, I want to acknowledge that, I think for a lot of people, and a lot of white people, to be blunt,
Mhm.
there is this sense of like, oh, like things are difficult all of a sudden. Oh, there's, here's this thing and we're living history and and that there's also, a different perspective, which is like, this has been happening the entire time.
This
This
is
is
the
it.
life that I've always had to
Yeah.
navigate, I've shared that with some of my friends
Yeah.
recently who have been experiencing our world in from a different lens. And, I love and appreciate them and respect them. But I have been, we talk very frankly. And I have said unfortunately, this is the navigation that I've experienced my entire life, from the time where, a guidance counselor said, oh, you should probably just go and do, a trade because I don't see college in your future. And I have a doctorate. And I was I will never forget, I'll tell you this quick story. When I was at the school system, I was in a room with a number, I think everybody around the table, it was probably about 9 of us in it was some of our executive leadership team, and probably 9 of us, and 7 at least were African Americans. And we had this conversation about when at some point in your life did someone say you should go on a different path? And every single one of us that were African American raised our hands because we had been told, oh, I don't think education is in your future. I don't think this experience is for you. I had a very wonderful professor. It was a white woman I was very close with in my undergraduate years. And I will never forget approaching her about studying abroad. And I had this opportunity to study abroad in Japan. And she only knew me from schooling. And, we had always had really great conversations. She always seemed to admire, my tenacity and things. And I never shared anything too personal with her. For her to say what she said to me. And then when I said that I wanted to do the study abroad and get her sign off to Japan, she said, oh, Khalilah, that's very expensive. And I was taken aback because I'm thinking, I didn't even talk to you about the money piece of it. Why would that be the conversation you just talked about to the class studying abroad 2 months ago? And now I have this opportunity to study abroad and I need your signature and your response to me. And so it was kind of a light bulb moment. And I'm like, oh, she sees me differently. And it was, impactful. And, I try my best to enlighten people and when probably, if different circumstances had aligned, I would have probably eventually had a conversation with her about my feeling on that. But there are times where I actively seek out the conversation to say, why would someone say that? Why do you think this? Do you understand what you're doing and how you're framing that would make someone like me feel otherwise? And so I've always appreciated, having the conversation. Some people walk away from those conversations, hopefully changed. Some people walk away from those conversations still determined to not see the difference. But I've been appreciative that I've been able to have the conversation.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's powerful stuff.
Absolutely.
It's powerful stuff. And to, to recognize in that moment, like, oh, I see what's happening and this is about her. This is actually not about me at all.
Exactly.
This isn't about me, but it still has carries a punch, packs a punch.
Yeah, it packed a punch. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's been so good to have you on the podcast. This is well worth the wait.
I've enjoyed this. You made this painless. My team knows as much. It's so funny because I went into communications kind of as a way to overcome my own fears. And so I am not the one who wants to be on camera. I'm not the one who wants to speak. If I can just prep other people, do the behind the scenes. And so I didn't really tell my team. I told one of them yesterday, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm doing this podcast because we're always trying to like cover our executive staff and what they're doing. And they're like, what? I say, I'll give you the information after, but you made this painless, as painless as it could be. So I very much appreciate that. It's been a great opportunity and a little bit of a trip down memory lane in my life. So this is good. Yeah,
when we first got on, you're like, okay, so this is just audio, right? Like there's no video. And I was like, well, actually, it is both.
Exactly. It's like, let me put a little lipstick on and I'll be right back. That's the lovely thing about, being in a virtual environment. You just get dressed from the waist up and you're good.
We don't need to talk about the bunny slippers that we're wearing or the...
Exactly. Bunny slippers, sweatpants, all the things. Yeah. Just throw on a jacket and you're great. Little lipstick. Totally.
Good to
go. Good. But that's women, right? We you gotta navigate. You gotta make it work, make it happen. I'm telling you, I told you earlier, like the more I get into this journey, I say, I love dads. They are wonderful people, wonderful beings, but moms are superheroes and that's who they should make movies about.
And not like one-off movies, but like an entire universe of just women superheroes, please.
Mom. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
No more
I'm so appreciative of mine every day, working and doing all the things and still trying to like hold it together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll keep our fingers crossed for that.
It's been great. I've enjoyed our chat and
so much.
So thank you.
So I want to make sure that our listeners know the best way to connect with you if they want to reach out.
Yes. LinkedIn is probably number one and easiest way to get a hold of me. If they find me there and send me a message. I don't do a lot of social media, but LinkedIn is the one.
Me too. LinkedIn is the one. LinkedIn is the one. We'll go ahead and put the link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes. And so that makes it really easy for people who want to learn more about you and your courage.
Cool.
Good.
Well, thank you. And thank you for doing what you're doing. This is great. I am very inspired and looking forward to listening more and hearing all the great folks you were interviewing because you have a good platform here.
And seeing each other's names pop up on our phones like, oh yeah, great, awesome. Yes, I'm going to answer this call.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Thank you. Have a great day.
Absolutely. You're welcome.
Sometimes courage is knowing exactly what would change the narrative and choosing not to say it. Sometimes courage is standing in front of the camera or behind the scenes and holding the line when the story unfolds without all the facts. Sometimes courage is walking into a room fully yourself and deciding exactly how you're going to use your voice and your presence. Dr. Khalilah LeGrand reminds us that courage isn't always about saying more. Sometimes it's about discernment, restraint, and staying grounded in your values when the pressure is highest. If this conversation made you think about the women on your team, your organization, or your own leadership, this is exactly the work we do through Courageous Public Health. We partner with organizations to offer facilitated, interactive virtual workshops for women leaders in public health, turning courage into a leadership skill so it becomes an organizational strength. Because when leaders are supported to act with clarity, intention, and integrity, organizations are stronger, more trusted, and better equipped to respond when it matters most. Interested? Reach out. Links to connect with us are in the show notes. Until our next episode, stay courageous. Thank you for listening to the Courageous Public Health Podcast. Visit courageouspublichealth.com to find the show notes for each episode and learn how to connect with us.